All right, there we go. We are kicking into the final session for this evening. This is Thursday session number 12. 12, there you go.
Yep.
And thank you, Mr. Shifty. So Kanye's here with us in the other thing. Say hi, Kanye.
Hi.
That was awesome.
That was so white, wasn't it?
And for those who haven't seen the chat room messages, he just told the audience to go to hell. So it's a good way to start.
The troublemakers to go to hell. Thank you very much. They know who they are.
All right. I didn't notice it being selective at all.
No.
So without any further ado, apparently this is a pants-free session, so I'm going to... No, actually, I won't.
Who said that?
It's winter and it's too cold, so I'm going to say it's shrinkage. And with that rather classy move, I shall disappear. Brendan, it's over to you.
Thank you, Richard. Yes, I'm going to be talking about the fun of working for a distributed team. Of course, because Richard called me Kanye, I'm going to open up with another Kanye quote. Yes, if you've never gone looking for his quotes on the internet, you should go and try that because it is amazing. So for those of you who don't know me, I work at GitHub on the desktop team. So we look after the Mac and Windows apps and some Visual Studio integration and some other bits and pieces. And I'm technically an engineer. That's the role title that I've got at the moment. It's been almost 2 years now in the job, and it was my first remote job. Before that, I was a consultant. And so for me, at least, it was a big cultural shift. And so I'm going to talk about some of the stuff that's happened since and some of the stuff that we do as a team. I had a check of some stats that we have at GitHub at the moment. We have 204 remotes. We consider like remote people to be the employees outside of San Francisco, and actually represents almost 70% of the company. So we deal with all the stuff that comes up with being distributed and all the good stuff and the bad stuff. So there's three sort of things I want to cover off in this talk. The first one is how you kind of go from being a centralized team to embracing the concept of being remote. The second one is putting yourself in the shoes of being remote and how that stuff changes your day-to-day routine. And because my team is distributed all over the world, I'm going to talk about some stuff specific to our situation and the things that we've learned basically working together. So of course, this is just a talk basically about my feelings. It could be content free, but hopefully you guys get some stuff out of it. Let's dive in. So the thing that I want to kind of talk about first off is all the bad rep that remote work gets. If you imagine people coming into an office and then someone switching over to being a remote person, it's an easy recipe for disaster because quite often teams won't change how they do their work. And ultimately, the person who's out doing his remote work is kind of left as an outsider from the team. And of course, this leads to feelings of inadequacy, feelings of that they don't know what I'm up to, feelings of being essentially lost. And it leads to then morale issues. You get sad that you're not in touch with the team. You get sad that your managers might not know what you're up to, and ultimately it just spirals. And so the team gets confused and sad, and then ultimately it's an easy recipe for failure. The really fun stuff is after a while, when things get so bad, the team gets angry at you, and you've kind of just like, it's very easy to kind of see the stuff fail. So rather than kind of go down this path of all the do's and don'ts, I kind of wanted to flip the thing around and go with kind of designing things around this question. How can someone be involved in your team without them being in the office? I went looking for some details on this talk recently, and I came across a lovely discussion. Well, it was an infographic from a company that was advocating against open office. And they brought up these three stats in particular around time dealing with distractions, how often people get distracted when they're in the office, and I love that one. 75% of interruptions each day are unrelated to work that people do. So for me, at least, I'd be pulling these stats up and showing them to my manager just to say, hey, I don't necessarily want to work at the office, and these are the benefits that I get. Anyway, just a little side tangent there. One of the things that I found really valuable was one of my first days at GitHub. I was hanging out with this guy, Maddox. He was advocating about how we track information internally, and he basically came up with this really simple rule. Everything important should have a URL. Basically, it makes things easy to link, easy to discover, easy to basically share around with people. And this can be anything like documents, code, chat discussions, all that sort of stuff. It should be easily discoverable because quite often you're not in the office. How do I keep up with everything that's going on? And of course, now I'm just going to have a little rant about email. I don't like email at all. I still deal with it a lot, but ultimately switching away to other ways of communication has been a blessing for my sanity. Because if I got up actually, I can tell you, I get up to like 8 in the morning in Australia time has been after the US has done basically half of their day. And then you've got Europe who was up the night before doing all their stuff. I get to wake up to basically 24 hours of email. It would be a hell of a lot worse if we were using email heavily, but ultimately we're not. We're mostly using it for like notifications and stuff, and all that stuff is done in essentially different ways. So yes, I'm going to talk about things that aren't email. In particular, better tools. The first one is chat. I hope you guys are using chat as a way for your teams to converse. If not, it's actually a pretty good way to get started. With experimenting with these tools. If you imagine the water cooler at work, if you swap that out for an electronic version of that, you basically got a number of the chat clients out there. HipChat, Slack, Campfire, Link. Is it Link? I'm not sure about Link. I haven't used it in a couple of years. But ideally, you have these tools that basically allow you guys to chat in real time and without being in the same space. So we use Slack a lot for open source projects that I work on. We use Campfire internally. But ultimately, the purpose of the chat room is to basically just have places for you all to talk. You set up rooms for your team. You set up rooms for, thanks, Cam. You set up rooms for basically just being social and kind of, you can also set up region-specific ones. So if, for example, we have room for all the Europeans to kind of just hang out because they're all online at the same time. And of course, you can also have private rooms. The idea is that basically giving people a chance to converse wherever they are, and however they want to organize. But the other real cool thing about having a chat tool inside your company is to integrate it with other systems. If you're doing CI, you could, rather than having a build light, you could have all the CI statuses plugged into your chat room. Deployments, when they work, when they don't, they all come into your chat room. Feeding information into your chat room is a great way for kind of centralizing information in a way that everyone can consume. We use Hubot a lot internally for our, basically we call them chat operations or chat ops. We can not only get notifications from Hubot when things happen, we can do things like deployments, set up environments, send notifications to people, get custom notifications set up. All these sort of integrations come in because we have this area to do the stuff, and we have this tool that we can then plug in on top. Again, really flexible stuff and really powerful. This is just a list of some of the Slack integrations that are there as an example. And things just, once you have that chat room up, you can kind of see a whole bunch of things flow from there. The other thing that we really have taken to is video conferencing. The ability to kind of talk with people, face to face, despite not being in the same area. It's a really great way for kind of basically feeling, well, the social interactions in particular, but emulating that stuff when you're distributed. Up until this point, when I started GitHub, my only real reference point was Skype. And Skype doesn't have a great experience in terms of fostering interactions. I just put up a random person that I blocked a couple of days ago. Like, this is not a great experience. Whereas if I look at the stuff that we use at the moment, Blue Jeans, this is a chat that we were having Tuesday. The team just kind of hanging out, doing a sort of our weekly status around stuff we're up to, stuff that's coming up, just discussing stuff. This experience is actually really, really nice. And I'll tell you a bit of the magic behind this in a second. But ultimately, this is just a way for us to have FaceTime-like conversations really easily and build up that human interactions. The other thing that we do a lot at GitHub is recordings of internal events. So this was an event that came up on Friday. Some of the engineering managers were out doing some talks. They were all streamed out live if you were up to watch it, or you could just grab the recording later. So I can come in here at my leisure and watch the tape. And so this is me coming back to the everything should have a URL. So chat discussions there are driven from URLs, videos are recorded, and then we can get URLs. Information that's happening in real time is captured for posterity, and we can go back and catch it. So the chat experience, not the chat experience, the video conferencing experience is stupidly easy. I have a URL for my chat room. I can give it to someone else, whether it's GitHub or not. And that's basically the workflow that's there. It also has recording under the scene so we can capture stuff for posterity. Again, really, really good tools. They're easy to use so that everyone does use them. I'm going to talk about GitHub for a bit. I wanted to kind of keep the stuff as much broad as possible, but there was one topic that I got talking to with someone recently around communications, and some stuff that we do at GitHub was rather cool. As I mentioned, I'm on the desktop team. We have our team name on GitHub is at desktop, GitHub/desktop. But there are also other teams at GitHub based on the stuff that they work on and the stuff that they care about, and it's in this discoverable format. So if you're looking for things related to support, they go to the support group. Real fun stuff about this is when you happen to mention them in issues. I get a notification because someone here mentioned the desktop team. But the real fun thing about the desktop team, well, the team integration in that itself, is that it kind of changes how your interactions happen across teams. You don't mention specific people in issues because quite often teams are in flux. You rather, if you know it's a specific sort of integration point between the API team and the desktop team, you mention those two teams together, and then all your notifications fly out from there. The other thing that's really good about these team notifications is that they should include some context on why the team should care. Again, really easy stuff to kind of just include, and then information sharing flows out from there. But the thing that I actually really enjoy about the stuff is that the users can join whatever teams they want. And so they opt into notifications that they want, unlike the mailing list approach, whereas you join a mailing list team and then that's it. Being able to kind of opt into teams that you want to follow along with is actually really, really pleasant. All right, let's switch over to being a remote worker. Yes, I definitely advocate for wearing pants, no matter what Richard or other people say. I think that there is something in dressing for the job like you were going out of the house. When you're working remote, you don't have to worry about doing the commute, which can often save you an hour or hours of travel. It's easy to kind of go and say, oh, you know what, I'll sleep in for a little bit. And then you get up, you do your work, you kind of forget to shower, you forget to shave. It's easy for that stuff to spiral out of control. So I definitely advocate wearing pants as an extension of having that morning routine. If you're working remote, ultimately, depending on the situation, you should have a routine, but whether you work in the mornings or the evenings or a bit of both, again, depends on your situation, but ultimately you should have a consistent routine to doing stuff, because otherwise it's an easy way to overwork or not work and burn out. So for my routine at the moment, I'm actually kind of working a 9-to-5 day mostly. It gives me some overlap with some of the guys in the US, and then it gives me a bit of overlap with Europe in the evenings. When I initially started, I kind of split it up a lot more, but anyway, I'm kind of adjusting my routine based on the situation. But ultimately, as long as you've got one and aren't constantly just doing random things, it's a good way to sustain things. If you're working from home, have a decent workspace. I've kind of been guilty of this. I'm doing some work from the kitchen bench at the moment, just because that's the place that I kind of enjoy. But if you're having troubles with focus or getting stuff done, have a look at what space you've got set up. Is it, are you able to isolate yourself from the distractions appropriately? Are you able to kind of just get shit done? If not, maybe the space isn't right. I'm getting a shamelessly steal this picture from Hanselman. He's been remote worker for many years now and has blogged a lot about it. He's got 2 young boys at home, and so he has this status light above his home office to indicate to the kids when he's actually available or when he's busy. Again, that's a great way to kind of deal with distractions. The other really dangerous thing with work from home is avoiding interactions. When I was in Sydney, I made sure to kind of hang out a lot with at other dev events to make sure that I was in the community talking to humans. The local barista is not good enough. You got to kind of talk to more people than that. but ultimately make sure you are talking to people, because it is easy to kind of get isolated when you're remote. And my favorite, this is a little rant, well, bigger rant. So this little phrase came up at GitHub to kind of explain how the sun is always up somewhere. We have people in, in Australia, in the US, in Europe, and there is always seems to be something going on behind the scenes, and it's easy to kind of work all the time. Because you might want to kind of catch up with blah 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 person about this thing. Ultimately, you've got to kind of draw your line at where the workday ends and catch up with stuff later. Quite often, like if you're only an Australian-based company, that's a lot less of an issue. But when people are more distributed, it comes up more often. The other thing that I'll rant about was this get a thing that came up. Microsoft promoted this a couple of years ago as a way for their Office tools to be more usable at home. I also kind of saw the dark side of this, where you can, if your work tools are available to you all the time, you can work all the time. Again, unhealthy stuff, especially when you're remote. You won't have those colleagues looking over you to say, let's go for a beer, it's 5 o'clock, let's punch out. Yeah, got to watch for these things and make sure that you are not overworking, but also kind of maintain that work-life balance. And so I've got to this point where I've talked a lot about being remote, but I haven't actually talked about being distributed. So that's the distinction that I'll dive into now. So this is a map of me. This is a map of where I am in the world, and I'm just going to draw on the rest of my team at GitHub: New Zealand, Sweden, Copenhagen, Iowa in the US. So basically, we're scattered all over the place in terms of how we work out. I also do some stuff with the libgit2 team around sort of collaboration and planning the next steps toward the project. If I also put them on a map, we get some more in Europe, some more in New Zealand. And at this point, I'm just going to show you that there is no way possible for us to all catch up at once that is sane for us. Time zones are literally my hell these days. I have this one open, this site open quite often just to kind of sketch out where things are relatively. But the really annoying thing is that quite often people will move around, and in my head, I've got roughly where these people are, but it's quite often not true. So Josh is someone on my team. He lives in New York, but at the moment, well, he was over in Seattle up until recently. I kind of knew he was over there, but I wanted to kind of check out when he was where he was at the time, to see if it was an appropriate time to bug him. Turns out, 9 o'clock on a Wednesday night, probably not a good time to bug him. We get away with this because it's all push-based notifications. So if I do a check-in on Foursquare, it's plugged into a back-end app on the GitHub side that updates my location status. I don't have to go into sites and manually update this. But again, it's some really nice stuff that we've set up because, yeah, time zones are the worst. And what about teams themselves who are all distributed? What sort of stuff comes up that you need to be aware of, and what sort of stuff helps out with being successful? Working asynchronously is really key to it. If you're used to being in the office and when you're stuck in a problem, turning around and bugging the person next to you, you will not last long when your team is scattered all over the world. Yeah, I don't know how else to put it than that, but ultimately I look at it as the upside is that I get some time of the day when there are people around. There's some time of the day when it's quiet, and so you kind of plan your workday around that stuff to make sure that you are maximizing your productivity. But yeah, you got to start thinking in that way. So the flip side of that is the quiet time for doing work is actually when you have overlap with colleagues, and this is really great time to do that stuff, because quite often I have like 3 or 4 hours with my American colleagues in the morning, and so that's a great time for kind of getting work done, kind of catching up on stuff that's happened overnight. And basically, it's a great time for getting work done, but a specific sort of work. So the stuff where I'm collaborating with people on other bits and pieces, that's the stuff that I'll tackle first thing in the morning, and then in the afternoon I'll have some other stuff up. If that sounds to you like a relay race where people are passing the baton around, yes, that's definitely how I feel about it. When I started out, I did the early morning and late night because actually, well, there was one person on my team, but I had various people just scattered around. It was more easy at the time to kind of optimize my routine for that. Some people who have young families or have to work specific hours, they don't have that luxury, but ultimately I kind of get away with it. So I'm happy with that. I did mention the tyranny of the sun, but ultimately coming back to this, when your team is scattered around the place, there is only so much hours of the day for you to be productive. So rather than kind of adjusting your stuff around it, try and find that balance between your work-life balance, because otherwise you will spiral out of control. And when things are quiet, initiative comes into play. Quite often there'll be times where you've got through all the list of stuff that's important, and you'll go, oh, I have some time left. Or you don't kind of knock off and go to the pub sort of thing at that point. You've got to kind of show some initiative around other stuff that's in the background, not quite as high priority, but stuff that still needs to be done. Definitely teams who do work together basically do show that initiative across the board. Communication is one of my favorite pet topics at the moment, because yeah, how we talk to each other, when you take away the voice and you have text or video recordings, it's a very different dynamic, and teams who do work well together are able to have those frank and candid discussions about stuff, especially when stuff's not going well. Having those avenues to kind of talk to your teammates and have that trust to kind of bring things up, your team should have it, and if you don't, you should find ways to make it happen. And of course, you don't stay distributed forever, or you shouldn't stay distributed forever. Your team should still catch up and talk about stuff. Well, you should catch up in the real world, and basically just build up that rapport, because you guys work together. Like, yeah, having those sort of out of work discussions about stuff and kind of just hanging out, it definitely helps with teams coming together better. One little anecdote, last year we were in Canada for our All of Company Summit, and someone, who shall remain nameless, proposed to watch The Room. If you've never seen The Room before, it's kind of nominated as the worst movie ever, but of course we all sat around and watched it, laughed our asses off at how terrible it was, and yes, that became an internal joke, and lots of internal references out of that, but that was all because we sat around and watched this terrible movie. But that's enough talking about all the human stuff. Let's talk about the programming side. A few little things that we've learned over our time. Code reviews. Code reviews are definitely stuff I have feels about. When you're all in different time zones and you're all trying to rush to get stuff done, it's easy to kind of just say, someone opens up a pull request, they discuss some stuff, someone else gives thumbs up, and then I wake up. All the stuff, and I didn't quite, well, I had some things that I wanted to talk about. I didn't quite like the direction it was going. I had some stuff that they missed. Like the review happened while I was asleep, and that stuff is kind of terrible for morale. One of the rules we've kind of brought in after it happened a couple of times is to, once pull requests are good, let them sit for a night, overnight. Let people kind of who give them time to chime in. My other pet hate is self-merges. If you're working on a project by yourself, sure, go merge away. If you're on a project with other people, don't self-merge. It's really, really, really dangerous, I think is the word. So I'm just going to make it super clear here. Don't merge your own code. Get some, can be easy. Sorry. Yeah, don't self-merge, just please don't. As you're kind of, if you've got them to go, you'll open up pull requests for stuff, you wait for someone to get reviewed, you'll open up something else. Over time, you'll find quite often that you have different, well, a number of different tasks on the go. For those of you who are sort of like, I just need to get this done, it can be a change of mindset from this task here to juggling a few tasks. But because you've got time and you're waiting for people to come up, don't be afraid to context switch and move on to something else. When writing things, whether it's in code reviews, discussions, or that, if you're feeling the urge to write something really, really big, give a summary at the top. Give some context around the stuff, and then as someone who's coming through, I don't see this wall of text and tune out. I see the summary at the top and I go, oh, that's about blah blah blah. I know then that I should go and dive into it, or my eyes would just glaze over and I'll move on. Having that context on top is really, really key to kind of understand where things are going. All right, so to summarize, team definitely help with success. They need to be used ultimately to be successful, and that requires buy-in from the team. If you're a remote worker, don't be a slob. Treat it like it is a regular job. You don't have to worry about your manager looking over your shoulder, but you still kind of need to look out for yourself. Teams are distributed, time zones around. Build up those personal in the team. Ultimately, you will kind of work people out eventually, and ultimately that's how the distributed teams succeed. So I'll finish up with a Kanye quote. And Richard, I gather there will be some. Do we have some questions? Fantastic, we have some questions.
We have some questions. Love some Kanye quotes. Love it, love it. All right, so let's see. Obviously, audience, feel free to throw some more questions in as we go. And let's see what we've got here. Let's start with number one. Do you think it's important to meet people in person?
Yes.
Asked and answered, Your Honour.
Ultimately, you'll have these kind of run-ins with people, and then from there, easier. Doing that stuff virtually is okay, but it's still not the same as kind of catching up and hanging out in the real world. The question about co-working spaces, yes. I had a co-working space in Sydney that I would go and hang out with a couple of times. I've got one lined up in Melbourne, which has a whole bunch of stuff. That's definitely a good substitute for hanging out in dev communities. Yes, definitely try, if there's a co-working space nearby, I can give you some tips for stuff. Yes, that's something that I definitely recommend.
On co-working spaces, how do you find a decent one versus one that's basically just like an open space distraction source?
Personal contacts. So the ones that came up literally have been through word of mouth.
Okay.
Yeah.
This one's from me. How do you avoid the temptation of various entertainment sources and distractions and so forth?
Discipline.
Personal projects, etc.
Just close tabs, turn things off, just kind of, but don't forget to reward yourself when you have done some stuff. My favorite trick is
I'm not going to ask about your reward type, but
I'll stop it. But no, one of my favorite things is just closing the email tab, disabling notifications, and just doing some work. It's beautiful to do because no one else can bug you, but it requires a bit of discipline.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a gamer, so I've got to make sure that I don't start playing until after everything's done. Because once I pick up the controller,
the best thing to do is don't buy a console. Nice. What have we got over here?
All right.
We have a team who is co-located and some are remote. So Poya, the best tip that I've got for a team which is co-located and remote is to get them all in the same channel. If you get the team chat room, make sure everything goes in the chat room, whether you're distributed or not. It sounds like communication isn't working, and ultimately someone's got to kind of just go, you guys are discussing that stuff, put it into chat, or summarize it in chat after the fact so other people can keep up. Yeah, that's the using it right side of the tools.
Have you done, by the way, just jumping in, have you done virtual Brendan at all? Like the Hanselman.
We did have some floating around the office at GitHub, but they got broken. Yeah, that was a fun experiment, but it kind of, they lost batteries basically.
Fair enough.
It was actually really cool. So I could drive it from here in Australia and harass people in the office. It was fun.
Geeking out. Okay, so have you got any people managers? This is probably not a comment about GitHub and some of its controversies, but do they work remotely too?
Yes, and yes.
That was easy.
Is there any specifics? Yeah.
That's the question.
No, so the management stuff has been sort of like like people who look after teams essentially, and so that they kind of facilitate stuff between the management stuff and the staff, but ultimately they're treated the same as remotes, if they do want to work remotely, of course.
All right. Wow, there's questions coming out of the woodwork everywhere. Okay, so Emma, how much of this was arranged by yourself compared to arranged by GitHub as a company? I don't know what this is.
Imad, can you
edit your question? Imad, back to it.
A lot of the stuff that we've done in terms of like the Hubot stuff and chat, and that has been around GitHub for a while. Video stuff has come in the last year and a bit, but still, it's stuff that's been picked up by the company, and I'm just like, hey, cool stuff. We have some guys who look after all the internal tools, and so if we have something that's cool, we go to them and just say, can we get blah? So yeah, it's stuff that's brought up by staff, but then it's taken up by GitHub.
Awesome. All right, let's throw to another one. Let's do Pavel's one there. Do you do video chats with other co-workers just to talk to them and shoot the breeze, basically, not necessarily about work, like how was the date, all that sort of thing?
One of my favorite chats was with one of the guys on my team, Rob. We were chatting about stuff, and it went for like 4 discussions about programming and solving all the world's problems. Yeah, we did that over video conferencing. And quite often, like if you're stuck in a little problem, you're kind of just like, hey, I need to pick your brain for a sec, set up a video conference and just kind of vent. Yeah, there's definitely uses for it more than the formalities of work.
It's just venting. Awesome. Okay, so Emed's other one, have you lost information slipped through the too many channels of communication? In other words, too many
information overload is definitely a thing. It's easy, especially like if you get pings like for all this stuff overnight, to get up and go, oh, I've had 27 notifications, blah, I'll just skip it. It does happen. How I prevent this is, I actually don't have any good tips. I have email notification. No. Sorry, I'll tell you what I do. I have all my notifications, particularly GitHub stuff, go into my email, and so I just triage the hell out of it. So the stuff that's important lands here, and all the other stuff goes there. So that's kind of how I focus my stuff, is around basically glorious regexes.
Love the regex. Okay, so all right, how do you deal with feature development with someone who's 12 hours difference from you?
So use that overlap time to get on the same page, and then divvy up work. So if you guys kind of can split things up ideally, and then kind of just go nuts, like that's the passing the baton stuff in particular. Yeah, I'd love, Cam, if you're having problems, drop me a line and I can bounce you some ideas around in particular.
So another question without notice on this one. Do you guys use Scrum or some sort of other mechanism internally? Like an agile approach at all? No.
So we
in terms of then,
yeah.
Well, in terms of then a product owner type person or someone who's trying to set up a feature, how do they disseminate that to the whole team? Do they do like a video recording and then just share it?
So let me jump in to do the GitHub pitch. So we use the GitHub stuff internally. So let's say we were working on a feature, we'd set up a milestone, we'd throw some issues into it, and then we have someone act as the product owner, essentially, someone in the team to kind of decide what goes in and what goes out. And so we manage all that stuff internally. We don't have someone external to the team deciding on that stuff, and we just basically use enough sort of process to get work out what we need to do and then crank through it. So things like burn down charts and story points and that, no, not really.
No, okay, so it's much more just a flow model, I suppose, than anything else then.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. So what about things like sharing wireframes and shooting the breeze on that?
We have very sort of mock-up tools that we use for demonstrating stuff. We have an app that some designers put together. It's actually this little prototype that we use. Nothing specific, and it's all kind of like situational, I think. We use mock-ups for doing stuff, and we just throw that stuff into GitHub issues to kind of just do the visuals on top of all the work that needs to be done.
Excellent, cool. All right, chat room, audience, what else you got? Any more questions? Throw them into chat. Otherwise, while I'm waiting for the delay for you guys to come through and ask more questions, I'm going to do the infamous round of applause things for Mr. Brendan. So I've just got to find my round of applause wherever it is. There it comes. Yes, it's beautiful.
You're too kind.
I know. And I just had to put a hat on just to celebrate.
I should put my hat on. Give me a sec.
Quick, get a hat. Not this one, not the tiara. No.
How's that? Look at that.
Party time. It is. I mean, the day is over. You know, it's the last day before the end of the conference.
My work here is done, so I should
conference
crack a beer.
party time.
Yeah.
We should reward ourselves by how awesome we are.
Exactly. I am the king.
But let's just have a quick check the chat channel. There it comes. Okay, everyone's giving you the clap in the other room. That's good.
Awesome.
Alrighty. So thank you, audience, for sticking with us for day 4. Tomorrow, just to do the quick run through of what's happening tomorrow, we have Emma doing IOC and ASP.NET 5, which should be interesting. We've got Aaron doing React, which is pretty cool, the JavaScript framework. And we got Rob Moore talking about Test Stack and Dossier in particular for doing useful testing patterns. It's always good to test our code. And we are pretty much done. So thank you, everyone. We will see you tomorrow night for the last day of the conference. I'd also love to hear pants off. Awesome. Love to hear some feedback from everyone as well. Just drop us a line in terms of how the conference is working for you, ideas for the next run, assuming we do another one, and we will talk to you then. Brendan, thank you as well. And
no worries. Thanks for
good
having
night,
me.
everyone. As we say, happy cooking.